welcome everyone again. Thank you for joining us today in our webinar on New World Screwworm. This is a webinar for awareness and preparedness for Hawaii livestock community. As just mentioned that this webinar is being recorded, and let me just introduce myself. I'm Juno Bustamante, and with the University of Hawaii Corporate of Extension. And I organized this with, thank you for moderators. It's going to be Prem Mahato. We're very happy to have you here, and I truly appreciate to take time to join us. Today, webinar will be from 5 p.m. to 6:30, and we'll include presentations for guest speakers, and at the end, 30 minutes of Q&A to address all your questions. So at any point, you can just drop off your questions in the Q&A chat or in the comments, and Premahato and I will be going through these questions after that. Just few housekeeping notes before we begin. Please make sure your microphone is muted during the presentation. We'll be monitoring the chat, and then we'll encourage you to complete. We're going to be sharing the demographics and the program evaluation form, and that helps us to meet federal reporting requirements and always continue providing relevant and impactful livestock extension programs to our community. We are very honored to welcome today's speakers. Dr. Rajeev Mishra is our extension veterinarian with Mānoa CTAHR, and Dr. Aurora Villarroel, veterinary medical officer from Maui County and the Hawaii Department of Agriculture and Biosecurity, also called HDAB. We're going to be increasing awareness in this topic, including identification, prevention, response strategies to help protect Hawaii livestock community.
Aloha mai kako. I'm Dr. Rajeev Mishra, and as you know, introduced me, I'm extension veterinarian with CTAHR. And first of all, I would like to thank you and Prem for inviting me to talk on screwworm. And yes, let's start. I'm going to talk about, if you have any question, you can drop me in the message. And once I'm done with my presentation, I'm going to answer it one by one. Or once we're going to complete Dr. Aurora presentation as well, then we're going to answer it together so that we will have a complete answer for that. So before we start this presentation, I want to make sure that I'm not creating any panic, or this webinar is supposed to be for information purpose. So this screwworm is right now not present in United States or any of its territory. It's not even present in Hawaii. So the only purpose of talking about this one is because right now a lot of things is going on our southern border, specifically when the breakout was reported in Mexico. Yeah. So why it is important for Hawaii? Because let me just give you an example. The most recent breakout in US was in 2016 in Florida's Key West. So one of the key deer was reported to have infested with screwworm, and within a week, around 130 deer died of this one. So that's how bad it is. So, and since we share a similar environmental conditions and all those things, that's why we want to make livestock producer aware about this new world screwworm, but this is not right now in any of the US territories, not in Hawaii. So new world screwworm is the larva of a fly called as Cochleomya hominivorax. So this is a special kind of flies. There are more than 3,000 kinds of flies, but this is one of its kind. And it infests all the warm-blooded animals, like any mammals on this planet, it's infested. And the peculiar character of this fly is it infests the living animals. And mostly it's going to infect on any of the wound or any of the scratches or bite marks that is present in the body. So this is the reason why we are going to talk about that. So if this is a fly, how it is different than the normal fly? So if you look at here, the one in the right is the normal house flies, and the one in the left is a member of family Cochleomya. So this is present in the family of blowflies. And if you look at these two pictures, you're going to find out what is the normal difference. So the normal flies, it's less than half the size of this screwworm fly. And if you look at the color, it's quite different. The normal house flies are dull and black in color, whereas the one of screwworm family are generally greenish and like shiny in color. If you want to know more how to differentiate it, these are the main differentiating character of this new worm, so screwworm fly. So this is the eye. The eye will be more like orange reddish in color. The thorax and the abdomen will be metallic blue-green in color, which is quite easy to differentiate from the black and dull color of the normal housefly. Other than that, if you look at it from the top, there will be 3 strips. It will have 3 straight lines, and the center one will be the smaller than the other 2. So these are the major difference between the New World screwworm fly and the normal flies that is found in our farm or at our house or in our kitchen. So what is the difference between a fly strike and a screwworm? Is the fly strike a screwworm? No, the answer is no. Both of them are completely different thing. We see a lot of cases of fly strike, like if suppose we are composting something, or if suppose we have, like right now we just really had a bad weather, we are seeing mud everywhere, we are having a fly, yes. So the main difference is any fly, the normal house fly can also cause a fly strike, but only the member of Cochleomya is going to cause the screwworm. Normal flies strikes are seen in the dead carcasses. Like if you're going to see those larvae will be on the dead carcasses or the necrosed tissue. But screwworm are seen on the like living body or the organism, the farm animal that is alive, and it doesn't have to be dirty. Usually if suppose a donkey is licking its body part, it's injured itself, then yes, if the fly is going to strike there, it's going to be normal fly strike. But for a screwworm, it need not to be dirty. It can even happen on the fresh wounds. And then there is a difference on how you see the maggot. Usually the larvae of normal flies are smooth on its surface, whereas the larvae of screwworm have the spirals around its body, which I'm going to show you next. Yeah, so this is the normal difference between fly strike and the screwworm. So now, first question, why it is called a screwworm? So because its larva, the larva of it is present in the wound, or it's present like a screw. So if you look at here, it's perpendicular, and this is the mouth. It's going to get attached into the body, and it have a serrated margins. And this is the reason why it's called a screwworm, because it fits in the wound as a screw. The normal screw we usually use for carpentry. So that's why it is called a screwworm. Now, there are 2 types of screwworm: the old world screwworm and the new world screwworm. The only difference between these 2 birds, these 2 fly, is the geographical area of distribution, or where it is found. If it is found anywhere in the Western hemisphere, like Western world is known as New World. So if it is found here, the worms are called New World screwworm. The one that is found in Asia, Africa, Middle East and all, those are called Old World screwworm. There are some difference in the general character, but they do the similar job. They infest the live animals, and they have the similar clinical signs. But the only difference they have is the geographical distribution. Few of the cases of old world screwworm were reported in US, but they were all from the imported cattle. It is not here, so that's why the name is different. Yeah. So geographical distribution. Since we are on the Western world, most of it's generally in the Latin America or Central America and the South America. So these are the country where it's endemically present. Because we worked a lot, we get rid of it in USA, in Mexico, then all those neighboring countries. And then then finally we get rid of New World screwworm in Panama. And Panama was always our main barrier. Like we never allowed screwworm to have outbreak after Panama. It was always in those South American countries. Yeah, so it's present. The outbreak have been reported in all these countries, and even the Caribbean islands like Jamaica and all those are endemic to these things. These flies can fly up to 160 kilometers, that is around 100 miles. So the most common, the flight is around 20 miles, but at an extreme point, it can go up to 100 miles. And it's of every generation. If suppose a fly is born here, then it can travel up to 100 miles. And if it's gonna lay an egg over there, then if the larva or another fly is gonna hatch out from those eggs, it's gonna fly another 100 miles. So that's why it's more important to control it rather than leave it. United States officially get rid of New World Screwworm in 1982. Before that, there were many incidents with the livestock producer. We were losing a lot of money for veterinary and the loss of animals. But after that, we did not have any of the major outbreak in any of the livestock production in US. So this is a geographical map how the screwworm, the elimination program of screwworm was started. So in US, we started in 1960. In Mexico, we started on 1972, and then we went all the way to Panama. And this one was our borderline. Like we make sure we doesn't have any New World screwworm infestation anywhere before Panama or anywhere so on any of these geographical location. Yeah. So the one most recent outbreak was in 2016 in Florida Keys, but again, it was only reported on those areas, but it never moved actually into the continental Florida or that part. So this is how we achieved it. So now let's talk about life cycle. So generally, a complete life cycle takes around 21 days. From egg to adult takes around 21 days. The male flies are ready to mate within 24 hours of birth, and female flies take around 3 days to get ready to give male produce. Yeah. So when an egg is laid on the fresh wound, it takes around maximum 24 hours for a larva to come out from the egg. And after that, they get burrowed inside the fresh wound. They start eating those flesh, and then they goes to L1, L2, and L3. From hatching to L3, it takes around 7 to 10 days. And after that, they fall down on the ground, they form a pupa. And after a week, they form a male fly, the forms a fly, and they just goes away. Again, the male flies only need 24 hours after birth, then they are ready to mate. The female flies are ready to mate after 3 days of birth. Usually a female only needs to mate once, and then she can be fertile for her life. The male flies can mate up multiple times in a single day with multiple females. A single female in a single time can produce around 200 to 300 eggs and around 2,000 eggs throughout her life cycle. So that's how bad it is. A single female can produce 2,000 larvae, and if we are not going to control it, those single larvae, if any of them are female, they can further produce 2,000 more larvae. So that's how bad it is. So how we can say who is at risk? So all the livestock species, because most of the time we have a really big range, it doesn't usually get daily examinations and all. So the main loss is if it's going to infest livestock, they're going to lose their body, like they are not going to produce to their maximum, and all those things they're going to increase. If they are not going to eat, if they are not going to feel healthy, we might lose a lot of animals. It can infest humans, but again, in case of human, it's mostly due to the lack of hygiene. If suppose you are not cleaning yourself, or if there is some rural area where there is a lack of hygiene, in those areas only the human infestation have been seen. Yeah, the presence of, if suppose your animal is infected, you might need to call the veterinarian, or if it is a reportable disease, it will be reported, then there will be all those issues that's going to further increase your cost for the veterinary care and other medicines and all. So it's also going to have economical impact on your farm. So clinical sign. So there is no any specific clinical sign, like the animal will be irritated, restless, depressed, there will be reduced feed intake, reduced water intake, the animal will be isolated in the site. The most peculiar clinical sign will be once you go close to the animal, you're going to see some like rotten smell or something like flesh eating smell. That's one of the most peculiar smell. Yeah. So if you get any of those smell, then you can suspect of the flies. But again, suspicion doesn't confirm it's gonna be there. You can just call the veterinarian. We're gonna talk about that. Yeah. So again, it can lead to weight loss. If you have a dairy animal, you will see there is reduce in milk production. If you have a meat producing animal, you will see they are not attending a lot of body weight. But again, these are all this kind of clinical sign you're gonna see in all kind of disease. So again, the only specific is you're gonna see a peculiar like bad smell of something rotten in when the animal will approach close to you. So these are some of the images I have copied from USDA on pen. So this is how you can, if you see any of those wounds, you can suspect it. But again, it doesn't have it in Hawaii, but this is just for information purpose. So this is the one. The fly will always lay egg on the periphery or on the skin. And once this egg hatch, it's the larva is going to feed on the fresh tissue. It's not going to eat on the tissue that is already infested or necrosed by eating of the other larvae. So it's always going to look for the fresh. And as it's always going to look for the fresh, the size of wound is always going to keep increasing. So here is the egg. This is the adult fly, female fly, and here is the larvae. Sometimes you're going to see it's bleeding, and if you look closely inside, you're going to see something is moving. So that's the larvae that is eating on the fresh. Similarly, here you're going to see the wound, you're just going to see a small pocket. And as I told you, it only takes around maximum 24 hours from an egg to get a larvae, which starts eating on the flesh. So you don't have to wait a lot to see this clinical sign. You can see this clinical sign within 24 hours of the infestation. So how it gets spread? So as we know, the female flies or a single flies can fly up to 100 miles. So yes, that's one of the way of the spread. The another one is movement of the infested animal. So that's how it was reported on the southern border. Like usually, whenever we import a live animal, it should be quarantined, and during quarantine, it should be regularly monitored. And during monitoring, if you see any of those flies or the larva, so that's one of the reason of the spread. And if you're not gonna quarantine an animal, it's just gonna increase the rate of spread. It's not contagious. So which means if suppose you have two animals, one of them is infected with screwworm, it doesn't confirm the other one is gonna get infected with screwworm. The other one is only going to get infected if it get injured on the barbed wire or something, and the flies came, sit over there, laid egg, and then it have a larva that's it start eating on it, then only it's gonna get infected, or it's not contagious. Warm and humid climate increase its rate of spread. Why? Because this fly and larva need optimum temperature. And since Hawaii have really nice climatic condition, not a lot of cold, not a lot of summer, so it's the perfect climatic condition for them to produce themselves. If there is a lot of wild population like feral pigs, feral chickens, deers and all, it's gonna create more difficulty to get rid of or eliminate these flies, because they always gonna act as a storehouse or a carrier host. Adventure tourism or uncontrolled animal. If suppose you have an open border sometime, or if Hawaii is quite famous for tourism, we receive thousands of tourists every day. If suppose a flies comes on those backpacks or something, that can also cause the spread. Yes, so these are all how this spreads from one geographical area to another or one country to another. How you diagnose or report it. So this part is mainly for the veterinarian. As a livestock producer, if you suspect you might have this thing, the first thing you need to is call your regular veterinarian. The veterinarian is going to come to you and he's going to do what he is supposed to do. Like he's going to examine the animal, he's going to see what is wrong. Based on his finding, his diagnosis, he's going to suggest you something. And if he thinks it can be a case of new World Screwworm, he's going to reach out to the USDA certified veterinarian, Department of Ag Veterinarians, and he's going to let them know that your veterinarian thinks there might be something like that. And those USDA and Department of Agriculture and Biosafety veterinarians is going to come and visit your farm. They're going to collect the sample, and they're going to collect the sample in ethanol, and then they're going to take the sample back, and they're just going to confirm whether it is or not. The chances of it being a screwworm in Hawaii is highly unlikely, but that's how the stepwise That's how the information is going to flow. So you're going to call your veterinarian, the veterinarian is going to examine the animal, then he's going to reach out to the department like USDA veterinarian or Department of Ag veterinarians, and they're going to work out together to decide what's going on. Yes. So treatment. So due to increasing number of cases everywhere on our southern border or like Mexico and Central America and Latin America, USDA have given some emergency approval for prevention as well as control. So Dectomax CA1, Exot, the cattle, and Ivomac. These two are the injectable preparation, and this is the topical suspension that have been approved for emergency use. Then we have this F10 antiseptic solution. This is a combination of pyrmethrin and other benzoyalkonium products. These are approved to be used for emergency purposes. For dogs and cats, these are, I think you might have seen all these medicines as a ticks and flea medicine, but these are also authorized to be emergency used as a treatment of New World Screwworm in case of dogs and cats. So if your dogs and cats is already on tick and flea preventative, then the chances of them getting this infestation is negligible because they are already taking these medicines, even though for some other purposes. So how to prevent and control these things? So the first thing is being aware, like being educated. Our job is to get educated and not to spread rumor or panic. So the first thing we need to see what is going on. So USDA website is the best to get up-to-date information, what is going on either on the southern border or in Mexico, or if there is any outbreak in the US, so that we are informed. Since it's not in US right now or any of its territory, we just need to know there is something called screwworm. If suppose, let's not think it's going to happen, if suppose there is the USDA reports it from somewhere, then we're going to start looking, being more proactive. Anytime you're going to import a live animal, always try to quarantine it. So basically how I think you might be aware about the livestock trade of Hawaii, we usually ship most of the like calf to California, they get grazed over there, they grow up over there, and then we import most of those beef cattle as a, like we import them as a meat. We doesn't import a lot of animal as a live animal. And whatever live animal are imported in the state of Hawaii, they have a really go through strict quarantine rules. So I think we have such a good rules. That's why I think it's really difficult we can have any of these things, because our Department of Ag veterinarians are doing wonderful job regarding the quarantine and all wound care. If suppose you are having a like disbudding or dehorning or having a castration or any of those procedure, make sure you are using proper cleaning tool, or you are trying to take care of the wound. If there is something, try to use some betadine, try to use some clean, or try to use some low antiseptic ointments, or try to use some fly repellent spray over there so that the flies will not going to come out. Yeah, you can also use, if suppose you are having just a fly strike, use some permethrin spray. That's going to remove all the flies, so the chances it's even going to go down. Quarantine and buffer zone are basically the way of prevention. Like Panama was always our buffer zone. So anything that is happening in like North South America after Panama, we are not really concerned, because Panama was our buffer zone. So anything happening after Panama, it's something we need to always be careful so that it's not going to happening in there. So sterile insect technique. This is a technique I'm going to talk more detail later on. So it is a technique where they make male flies, like they usually sterilize. So they undergo some radiation therapy so that they cannot produce fertile semen. And when they mate with a female, they produce egg which is not fertile. So that's, they cannot produce more flies. So that is the sterile insect technique. And this is the most cheap and most effective technique we have got so far. So sterile insect technique is on the basic concept like a female, if they're just going to mate once, they are good for the whole life. They can produce the fertile egg after that. But a male can mate multiple times. So what was the concept? These two scientists, Edward K. F. Kingpin and Dr. Raymond Wasland, they were the main pioneer for sterile insect technique. So they raised a lot of male flies, and then what they did, they irradiated with gamma radiation, and they make it sterile. And what they did, they spread it over all the Panama and like every country. What did they the number of sterile male were so much, the chances of female mating with a sterile male was high. And since they cannot produce any more fertile egg, they are gradually going to reduce in number. Yeah. So that was the basic concept of sterile insect technique, and it's working wonderful. It's going to take it usually takes some time because you have to control it generation by generation. Yeah, but it is working wonderful. So the conclusion is, with all of things going on right now, so when we used to have a screwworm in US, every year we are losing around $200 million every year. Then we get rid of screwworm. We make sure Mexico doesn't have a screwworm. We pushed screwworm all the way to Panama, and those were achieved by sterile insect technique. Since then, after that technique, we are annually saving around $1 billion for the beef industry. So that's a lot of money. So this is how like a scientific innovation can transform agriculture and make sure we are getting rid of different kind of disease. So this is how it happened. So if you have any question, you can go for right now. Or if you doesn't have any question, let me know.
Thank you, Dr. Rajeev. It's a very good presentation that kind of getting to know the basics. We're just gonna let Dr. Aurora to upload her presentation, and whenever you're ready. Thank you.
There, can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna connect my camera just a little bit for a second so that people know what I look like. And then I'm gonna disconnect so that the connection doesn't go any slower than it already is. So you see me, I'm gonna go to the presentation. Okay, so my part of the presentation is to let you know what the government is doing about screwworm to help prevent and prevent it from coming into the US and be ready if it comes. So let's see if we can move this. There we go. Okay, so it's, as you can see, it's a 5-step approach, not 5 steps, one in a row, but all of them at once. And it's focusing on border defense, surveillance to see what's out there, the sterile fly program that Dr. Rajeev already mentioned. I'm going to go a little bit more in detail into it. Some looking into research to see what things are to be done in the future, especially nowadays that things go so fast and new developments. And then something that most people just never think about, but coordinating all of the different agencies that have to interact to control something if it happens, and to prevent, actually, right now. We actually are lucky we have Dr. Henkin on the phone. She is one of our USDA VMOs here at the state. And we have the big boss also there, Dr. Maeda. So if you guys have any questions for the Department of Agriculture, we got the big boss on the call, so he can answer them. Okay, so first step or first prong, what do we do, right? What are we doing on the controlling the border, step one, and the movement? So one of the things that I don't think a lot of people know is that the USDA actually has a lot of people working outside the US. That's called the Foreign Agricultural Service. And those people actually, there's 150 officers and there's like 350 staff members. And what they do is they work in those other countries with those other countries' governments and Department of Agriculture to help them develop the methods and strategies to do surveillance and to do control. because if we help them over there, then it does not come over here. We can prevent it from coming over here. So that's the idea behind that. You can see it's in about 30 countries. It's sometimes I found 27, sometimes 30. It probably depends on the dates. And there's obviously a very strong team with the Mexico border, also up with Canada. But since the New World Screwworm is coming from the south, we're going to focus on the Mexico border. So there are very strict protocols to import animals, especially from Mexico. But anytime that we bring animals in, the animal has to undergo an inspection or examination by a veterinarian at the point of origin, and a treatment against parasites, ticks, and now for the New World Screwworm, there, like Dr. Rajeev mentioned, some of those conditionally approved or emergency use drugs. Then when they come into the country or Hawaii, because we are an island, we are actually blessed by that. It's the perfect biosecurity method to just insulate us from a lot of things that could potentially be coming in, because we have no roads that can go above the sea. So you can either come by boat or you come by plane. That's it. We don't have all the roads that all of the other states have to worry about. So we examine them on arrival. For example, here on Maui, when there's livestock coming in via the airport, I am the one inspecting them, and we look at everything, and we even treat them again to make sure that if we missed anything, which we hopefully didn't, you don't want to be the one missing one of these, that we have them covered. So now they've been treated already twice. And if they come from a country that has New World Screwworm or the possibility of having it, then they undergo a 7-day quarantine in a permanent import quarantine facility. So that's most likely is going to happen in mainland. But we also have quarantine facilities both in Oahu and here on Maui. So places to look at, because I constantly see pictures about New World Screwworm, and all of them are just showing you the lesion, but you don't really see what part of the body everybody is looking at. So we're looking at places where you can have injuries. Okay, so the typical ones are going to be your ear tag placement places, in between the hoofs, in females, anytime they calve or they kid or they deliver a baby, you know you can have injuries over there. And then in babies, the umbilicus. That's a very easy spot to get fly strike or any type of fly that will go and feed on it. And in the end, New World Screwworm is the larva of one of the flies, which that's where they go. But sometimes you can find it in very unusual places. I did not expect to find it inside the mouths of animals. Not that I've ever seen it, but going through pictures and all the trainings and trying to find information on this, this has actually been reported also in humans. It's amazing what you can find on the internet and lesions with New World Screwworm in the mouth, in the eyes, places that you would have never thought of. So we can't just ignore anything that is not a regular injury, but as you know, we all develop, we lose our baby teeth and we get the adult teeth, right? So there's a damage in the mucosa in the skin, and that's how you get an injury that can get infested. So here's a map, and this is only Alaska Airlines and Hawaiian Airlines. And I want you to look at, there's two colors, right? You have the purplish, pink, whatever the color that is. Those are the direct flights from the islands to anywhere else. The blue lines are all of the other connecting flights. As you can see, those are Alaska, right? So now that they're together, if they meet in a hub, you can see where, I don't know, can you see my mouse? Okay, thanks, Dr. Rajeev. So if you have someone flying from Panama and it goes into LA or San Francisco, and then from there it comes into Oahu or Kauai or Maui, if it gets missed over here, it can come into Hawaii. And you have probably flown, you know that you have maybe an hour, maybe 2 or 3 hours connection in these hubs. So that's why it's so important to inspect at the source and not so much over here. But if you do it in both places, then you cover more probabilities of having one missed. So this is data that I found on that screwworm.gov website. That's has been a website that was designed to have all of the information about screwworm all in one place. Basically, what you have is a bunch of links to the other websites, but at least it is all in one place. So if anyone is interested, that's where you want to go to look things up. So as of March 11th, which was last week, there's been over 100 and I guess now 60,000 cases in animals in South and Central America and Mexico, and already over 1,500 cases in people. Mexico itself is what Dr. Rajeev mentioned. There's not that many, but and that's our direct neighbor, but it's not a small thing that is happening in Central America. So there has been one case in a human detected in the US, and that was a person that traveled from El Salvador. And what the CDC and the USDA did is they worked together to establish a 20-mile radius in targeting surveillance of flies and with traps and identifying what they found. And because of the area of Maryland, they covered areas from 3 different states, and they never found a single fly from the Cochleoma species. So why is this all important? All of these routes of importation, because you can have stowaway animals. I don't know if you guys heard, but there was a stowaway skunk that showed up in Maui a couple months ago. They go on the boats, nobody sees them until they open the ports in Hawaii, and off unloads a stowaway. We have stray animals that can go around, wildlife. Obviously, we have a lot of wildlife here on the islands. We got deer and chickens, and all of them can get infected. So, infested. So everybody needs to keep an eye out, because if it happens, we don't know where it's going to pop up. And those illegal imports, those are people that bring in animals that are not declared. And so those can be very, very dangerous for everyone. And sometimes it sounds, you say illegal import and it might sound like something nefarious. No, it could be a little Chihuahua brought on a private jet that they didn't know they needed a permit to bring him in, and it flew directly from Mexico and nobody knew about it. So those illegal imports are very important, and they could be very innocuous, but we don't know what it can happen. And then just a shout out for everyone who's listening. There are requirements to move animals in between the Hawaiian Islands. So go online and find that information, and make sure that you fill that information up, because that is how we can find If something goes wrong, we can go back and say, oh, so this came from here and this came from here. Let's look at these animals that were in this area or these other animals that were in this area. If we don't have that information, it's going to be very difficult to protect the animals in Hawaii. So the second part is surveillance, and the most important part there is identifying the right culprit. So I know it sounds very simple. You look for the 3 stripes, you look for the metallic collar, you look for them burring down, but it's not that simple from what I've heard. So here you get a picture on the left. These are the larvae from these flies. Each one of these numbers is a different fly. So yeah, you can see these are different. The bottom row is very different from the top row, but would anybody bet your livelihood, your job on making sure to be able to tell which one of these is the right one and which one is not? Would you be willing to risk your animal's life on this? I wouldn't. So, by the way, the New World Screwworm is #1. So, but that's how difficult this is. And what the entomologists do is they have this flow chart where they look at different parts of the worms and they identify whether to go left or right. So you get to see, for example, for me, step 2 here, if you don't have a microscope and you don't get to see this, there's no way it's going to show like that. So it's not going to be that easy for a person to just look at a worm and say, oh yeah, I'm going to go ahead and submit it in. So by the way, there's a special submission process. We have a special form, the tubes, and so your best option is call your veterinarian. They will call us, and we have a process to ship this overnight to get to the appropriate lab, and it's free of charge for us. So, on the surveillance part, this is why it's so important. This is, Dr. Rajeev mentioned this, the Florida Keys in 2016. So here's a map of the islands. Florida is up here, and you get to see the different islands and how many different cases they have, right? And so this is just the total at the end of the outbreak, and then here you get to see it by date. So you can see it started in October, and the last of the wild screwworm flies were still found in January, which is 3 months later. It was probably just a couple of them, but if you have a couple and they are finding themselves and it happens to be a male and a female, it can restart. So this is why you have to make sure that you do the surveillance for the correct amount of time. So you can see this was about 5 months to call it done. So this is about the sterile insect technique. I figured I'd make a map, so I like things visual. So here you get to see North, Central, and South America. This green site is currently, right now, the only production facility of sterile flies. It is making about 100 million flies a week, but not all of them make it. So they get to release maybe about 80,000 live ones, 80 million live ones every week. But that is every week. And they take those flies currently to 3 dispersal facilities, which are these in brown. And this one on the top is actually in the US. It's in Texas. The other 2 are in Mexico. And the light green one is a facility that started construction a few months ago, and it's supposed to be finished in July and working. And the yellow one is more air base in Texas, and it's planned currently, and they're trying to start construction here soon in the spring. So once all 3 facilities are in place, they expect to produce 500 million a week. And you can see by adding 2 more production facilities, they're multiplying by 5, not just by 3, because now that they have the blueprint, it's going to be easier to build it faster and make it better. So this is a picture of the facility, the only one that exists right now. It's in Panama. Funny enough, when I looked up information about this, I found out that a former friend of mine, when we did the PhD together in Colorado, she's the big boss over there. So I need to call Celia and say that I get to show her place. It has a lot of information. It has its own website. They do a lot of education to their clients. This is a PDF that they have. I've cut it a little bit because it was showing some other information at the top that we did not need here. And so it's showing us how many people they have working there. It's 412 people. Sorry, it's all in Spanish. They have 25 centers of work. So it's not just one location. They have several different areas. And they have 160 people that are looking specifically at animals and their honoraries. So they are not part, I guess they're not paid by the co-op, but they are trained. So you can see they're reporting 80 million larvae being produced, 70 million freed every week. So these numbers have improved. I don't know how old this is, but these numbers have improved. So okay, and why? Let's see how this actually works. Remember that map about the Florida Keys? So before I showed you the infestation, and now I'm showing you when how many of the flies were released. So you get to see, if you remember, this was the island that had the most infestation, the most cases, and obviously it got the most sterile flies. And then on the outer edges, you got the fewer flies. And this is, again, the same graph that I had before, which shows you the release of the flies. Here we get some more flies released, a lot more flies released, and that's when these are disappearing. So this is why we do this. Okay, number 4, research. And this is actually really interesting because this is how the sterile fly technique popped up at one point. And they are coming up with new things, and they're looking for new things. So right now there's 100 million in competitive grants available, and it can be anywhere for universities, private sector, research institutions, or a combination of them. And the goal is to ensure the U.S. agriculture, animal health, and trade. That making sure that that's protected, all 3 of them, not just one. So they're focusing on several areas, which I found really interesting. I do some research, so I guess that's why I found it interesting. First, they're trying to make sure that they can produce sterile flies more efficiently and at a lower cost, obviously. So that's it's important because you can see that that is a technique that works. So let's use the techniques that we know are working, and then let's look at other techniques at the same time that can work better. So they're looking at preparedness, so better traps, better lures, how to detect flies when they're actually there, surveillance tools. So, for example, one of the things is here on the right, where even though this is actually, I think, 1998, I can't remember the year of this one, but it was a test. It's like a pregnancy test. So you smush up a worm, and then you put it on the stick, and it will tell you whether it's screwworm or not. So I don't know if that's what they're using at the USDA, or they're using this at some of those locations where they're identifying and the flies and doing surveillance. But I thought it was pretty cool. And then they're also looking at response strategies, which any type of new technologies like the sterile flight technique that popped up this way, or any methods that could come up with, I don't know, I guess AI will help develop some of these now in the future, but that's why the money is going to be available to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to contribute to this. And so lastly is the federal coordination. And this is, I don't know if people realize how many different parts of the government play together when something like this happens. Even in a situation like we are right now, where we are preventing, we are seeing a lot of agencies come together. I don't know if you guys are seeing this. There we go. So first, the Department of Health and Human Services declared an emergency so that the FDA, which is underneath the HHS, can start authorizing products to prevent or to treat. So I'm going to go a little bit more into this because it can get complicated very fast, and I think people can see better with pictures. At least I can. Okay, this is a rough sketch of the U.S. government. So in blue, the legislative branch, and in yellow, the judicial branch, and in red, the executive branch. So you get to see everything that is marked with a green circle. Those are agencies that currently are all working together for this. And you can see each one will have their own budget, right? We've all heard what is happening right now with one of the budgets. So everybody has their own budget. Everybody has their own people. Everybody has their own ways of doing things, their own locations, and you have to coordinate all of that. And not that easy. And you can see they're spread all over the place, right? So this is directly from the screwworm.gov website. This is where I focus, and I monitor it frequently. The announcements. This is where you're going to get the links, and it's going to take you somewhere else. But I want to draw your attention to those things highlighted in red. Why? Because a lot of people are mixing up emergency use authorizations and conditionally approved drugs, and they're not the same thing. So a conditionally approved drug, as the name says, it's an approval, okay? So that means the government is saying, the FDA is saying, yes, you can use it. And it's a formal way of acknowledging that that product has all of the standards and whatnot. It might be, it doesn't require all of the paperwork and all of the insurances that a full approval requires. So that's why it's conditional. But in the end, notice that it's a marketing authorization. So what that's saying is, hey, you company XYZ can market this product for, and then they will say for the treatment or the prevention of screwworm disease. Keep this in mind, because later, and I think Dr. Rajeev mentioned this, there was a product that had the name, the word CA behind it. That's what that means. It means it's conditionally approved, okay? And then an emergency use authorization is not a formal approval or license, and it's only a temporary authorization, again, not an approval. It just authorizes temporarily to use a product that is either unapproved or the use for that specific situation is not approved. Okay, and this only happens when there's a declared public health emergency, which is what we have right now with New World Screwworm. So that's why we have some of these products out there. I want you to pay attention to this next slide. here are some of the products that are approved or have an emergency use authorization and which ones do not. So, for example, this here on March 10th is for this F10 germicidal wound spray with insecticide, not just the antiseptic solution. That one is not allowed. In fact, it's not going to do anything because it doesn't have the insecticide. So this is very important that you start reading labels, both in what is approved and what you're getting. Okay. Ivomec, I think it's one of these two. So it's conditionally approved, but it's only the injectable. Okay. And not the plus, because the plus has chlorcelone on it, not just ivermectin. So this one would not fly legally. Would it work? Probably, because it has ivermectin, but you could get in trouble if there's an inspection at some point. Puron, not approved. Exalt cattle CA1. Remember what I told you about the CA1? Conditionally approved one. This one is approved. So this is the only Puron that is approved. Here's another complication. The FDA tells you if you have a product that is approved, even if it's conditionally, you are not allowed to use another one that is not approved, even under an emergency, because you have this one. So if in doubt, call the USDA or call us and we'll help you with that, or call your veterinarian. But be very careful. So the drench, not approved, not conditionally approved, not emergency authorization, nothing. Here's another trick that you have to be, or a tricky part where you have to be careful, right? We have Ivomec injection, which is injectable ivermectin, all good. But this one is not Ivomec. This one is Durvet. So this one is not approved. This one is, okay? This is why it's very, very important that you guys read the labels and be aware of them. So to end up, I'm just going to show a couple of slides because I think this is important on how to tell the difference between what is likely New World Screwworm and what is fly strike, which we will encounter. And we don't want people to freak out, right? So New World Screwworm, like Dr. Rajeev showed in his presentation, they stay in the place and they're just burrowing down. They're going down into the body. The regular fly strike, they're just going to be on the surface and they just spread out. But especially in sheep, those of you who have sheep, you know this, it just burrows in between the skin and the wool. The wool is not alive, so it just goes on the skin, but it's on the skin, not into the skin, right? And because of that, fly strike is going to be a lot more expansive in its lesions. Notice, for example, here in the middle picture, all of this is just eaten raw, but it's on the skin. You can still see the skin. And yet on the New World Screwworm, you get to see that this area over here has been clipped. It had not been touched at all. It's just these little holes. Okay. So these are the layers of the skin. The regular fly strike is just going to sit on the top and it's just going to squirm all over the place and just clean up all that area. The New World Screwworm is going to go down, down, down as far in as it can. Why this can be life-threatening, not just because of bacterial infections, but think about it. You can see here, I have veins and arteries. So if you go and burrow into that and you hit one, they can bleed to death. Okay, so that's why it can become life-threatening. And then here's a couple of pictures in chickens. We always read that chickens are not as likely as mammals to get New World Screwworm. That does not mean they can't. And since we have so many chickens on the Hawaiian Islands, I figured we just show it. So New World Screwworm on the left, you get to see how it's burrowing into holes in there. It's creating these pockets in there. This is fly strike. So you get to see how it's raw all over the cloaca. This is her normal opening to push the eggs out, but you can see how everything else is raw. I hope you guys see that difference, how the feathers are just eaten up over here, and you get to see the entire skin, and the skin looks actually fairly okay. It's nice and pink, and here it's all rotten. That is your major difference. So there is an emergency response plan. It has a lot of things. We are training constantly on the different aspects of this with the USDA. We work very, very close with them. We are lucky to have a couple of the veterinarians living here in Hawaii with us. So if you guys have any questions, you can contact either one of us. And I'm done. So if I think we have time for questions. So any questions are welcome. Dr. Maeda and Dr. Henkin, please keep your microphones close by.
Yeah, thank you. This is very, very good information, and definitely the pictures, they kind of make a difference as they visualize it, the difference between. Um, I think also it's like relevant because of, like you mentioned, importing animals to Hawaiian Islands, so always be awareness and be informed of that. I don't see any questions right now, but feel free to drop it in the chat. Oh, I have someone to raise their hand, so go ahead, Gary.
Hi there. Thank you for your presentation. A couple of questions. Is there any, in your research, does the animal's nutrition or the bedding or the environment seem to indicate a greater or lesser propensity for susceptibility to the screwworm? Are there any environmental indications which would indicate that?
I can take that one. So remember that the fly goes into wounds. Any little wound works, even a tick bite. Okay. So yes, totally. The environment is going to make a huge difference in the sense that make sure that you don't have loose wires where they can get injured, jagged edges on wood or concrete. You would be amazed the kind of injuries that we get to see from things like that, pipes, those kind of things. So you're trying to make sure that the environment is not conducive to have any type of injuries. As for nutrition, obviously an animal that is not in the best condition will not have the best immune system. So is it going to prevent the fly from laying the larvae? No. But it will help slow the way the how would I say this? The damage that the flies can do because the tissues are going to be healthier. Does that answer your question?
Sort of. I guess more question I have is, have you seen farms or environments where you've found evidence of the fly or the larva, and there are animals which have exhibited injuries where just to give you an example, I mean, I've had a couple of cases of sheep where I've had fly strike, and in retrospect, it's always a sheep that is either health-wise compromised. I've never had a situation where that has spread, and I've had other animals that have had wounds where I've seen flies on those wounds, and that never materialized as fly strike. So I'm just wondering if there's any correlation that has been seen along those lines.
Well, that's what I was saying, that if the animal is healthy, its tissues are healthier and it will be able to fend off things better than an animal that is not healthy. Remember what we said from the very beginning. It has not been diagnosed here in the US. It's not active here right now. I mean, it was diagnosed in the Keys in deer. And yes, it's always the weak ones, the effective ones for whatever reasons. But if you think about it, those are going to be the animals that they're not swatting the flies away as actively. They're going to be hiding in places, trying to get away from the rest of the animals. So they go on the bushes, they go, that's how they end up with those injuries. I have not seen any research done in Central America and Mexico specifically about that. But to me, the answer is a clear yes. If they are immunocompromised, you're going to have a higher risk in those animals.
I'm sorry to take your time, but I've got a couple more questions if you're okay with that.
I'm fine.
So what I see is when I have a dead animal, I study the flies on those animals, and it seems like there are different classes of flies which tend to devour different types of animals. Is there any study which suggests that there are certain animals that this fly has a propensity towards and others which it has an aversion to?
Not that I know of, but that's an interesting question I'm going to write down and look it up, but not that I know of.
Okay. Are there have there been any studies where there have been farmers that might have been feeding certain crops or animals that are exposed to certain crops in pasture, which tend to safeguard them from infestations of this animal?
I don't know. Good excuse to call Thalia.
Okay, and last one, I promise. In South and Central America, where we're finding this fly, is this a fly which, under ideal circumstances, the life cycle would be controlled by bats or birds, or do we know what eats this?
I have not seen any information on predators on it. So I'm sure that they've tested that, but I have not heard anything. Dr. Henkin or Dr. Maeda, are you aware of anything? Sorry to put you on the spot, but
That's a good question. I don't actually, they didn't talk about predators of the screwworm fly, but it's like any other blowfly. So I'm sure a bird would pick it off if they like were moving slower. But for the most part, they're just kind of bopping around and like the adult lifespan isn't like super long. But I don't know that there's not any specific like bat or bird species that specifically goes for screwworm or any kind of blowflies. But yeah, it's a good question, but I don't know of any in particular.
Thank you.
thanks, Dr. Henkin.
I did want to jump into just because Gary brought up some good questions and kind of relating back to the climate. Dr. Aurora already knows, but I was in Panama 3 weeks ago, and then I was in the Keys during the 2016 outbreak. And guess what? Panama and the Keys and Hawaii all have in common the same climate. Like honestly, there were multiple times in Panama in the jungle. I'm like, this looks like Big Island. So the fly, like they need the hot, warm temperatures. And so honestly, out of all the states, like Hawaii and like Aurora mentioned too, it doesn't have to necessarily be nefarious. It could be accidental. Like that's probably how it's going to, if it does come in, that's probably how it's going to happen. It's not anyone's intentions, but like it's crafty. It can hide in any kind of wounds. And the episode in the Keys in 2016, like those deer, the reason the deer got it is because they're in rut, and those deer aren't very big. So there's only one main highway coming in and out of the Keys. And so the first couple, they thought like, oh, it's a hit by a car deer. That's not a big deal. It took them a good month or so to figure out, oh, wait, these maggots, like, some of these deer are still alive and they already have maggots on them. And the wounds that they have are insanely huge. Like this isn't something that's normal. And so it took a long time for a practitioner to send in a maggot and be like, oh, wait, this isn't a normal myiasis. This is screwworm. So kind of jumping off of what Dr. Rajeev and Dr. Aurora were talking about before of like, number one, Hawaii is like, we have the perfect climate for this fly. Like if it gets in, it's going to be really, really hard to control. We have a whole bunch of feral pigs and feral chickens. And so we have the correct environment. We have the animals. Also, too, it affects people. So we mentioned already that it affects warm-blooded mammals, but also like we're warm-blooded mammals. It's affected, I think, over 100 people already in Mexico. I know it affected 1 or 2 in Florida. And like I heard a story about, you think about, oh, well, I'm a person. I would notice. but there was a young girl who had a little, I guess, nick on her head, and she didn't realize, and she was scratching her scalp, and her parents didn't realize that she was scratching her head, and she had a screwworm infestation on her head. Also, anyone who is immune compromised or who is maybe not cognitively aware, so maybe like an elderly person or someone who's not quite like, cognitively aware of their body, like they could have a wound that they're not aware of and could foster infestation. So I really just want to like kind of drive home what the other doctors already kind of mentioned of like, we have to stay vigilant because we have the perfect environment for it. We have the species, and it can be super innocuous of someone not meaning to, but all it takes is one wound. And those larvae, they showed us in Panama, the L3 stage. He's like, hey, watch this. The Copeg guy dropped it on the ground. It burrowed within like 2 seconds. And so those things burrow, they pupate, they hatch out, and boom, we have the whole life cycle all over again. So really, like, if I can drive home like any take-home messages from someone who's seen active screwworm infestations in Panama and Florida both, I don't want this in the state. We have to be vigilant for any kind of myitis on any kind of animal. And so not just our pigs, not just our livestock, but dogs and cats, humans as well. And we have to be aware. And I know too, Hawaii, we have so much myitis, right? We have, Gary already mentioned the fly strike in sheep. We have that pretty routinely. But we're not relying on the people in the field to, okay, you have to be able to have a microscope in your back pocket and identify these. We're looking for things that don't seem right, that you guys know your animals. You've seen normal fly strike before. We have not had screwworm ever in Hawaii, but if you see something that looks weird and that looks like, hey, this is a really, really big wound, or this happened really quickly, or, I got a new animal from Texas. I shipped in a sheep or a pig from Texas, and like, yeah, it has a weird wound. Like, please, please, please call us. Either someone like Dr. Aurora with the state or someone like myself with USDA. I'll leave my contact information in the chat box. But please, please, please just be vigilant. Call if you have any questions. I'm more than happy to swing by. And also, like Aurora mentioned, it's free of charge. We have funding to do testing and to do surveillance. So please, please, please reach out if you see anything weird, and just really remain as vigilant as possible. Thank you.
Yeah, that was very good. I think you condensed it and summarized all that we tried to communicate in this short sentences. Thank you, Dr. Kimberly. Yeah, definitely that started with this conversation about like, I'm from Mexico, and we're like, yeah, this, and I see the struggle over there, and we're like, yeah, in Hawaii, we share some things like the environment. Then we want to be aware of what's happening, and just, if we're moving the animals, and just we can always start practicing. We have very often calls and requests about fly strike, so we started getting more vigilance about caring for the wounds and just treating the umbilical cords and taking care of the babies, be more observant. But I think with that in mind, probably we're gonna start preparing another webinar for flight and fly strike and how to treat it, just to be more aware of this topic. If anyone else has another question.
Yeah, and if I can just I meant to say this earlier and I forgot. Personally, I am more worried about dogs and cats because they don't get as many inspections as livestock. And so one of the things that I don't know if you noticed, but the approved products are the ones that we use every month on our dogs and cats. So be mindful and keep using them. Make sure that they are on the preventive, and that's the correct word, preventive, not to preventate, not preventative. It's preventive. So put them on the preventive for fleas and ticks. Most of those help with to protect against screwworm. So that way we make sure that we are preventing from the beginning. And then in livestock, use your dust ons. They have permethrins that they will help with the lice and the flies. And remember, this comes from a fly. So if you do fly protection, you are already doing everything you can to help from the beginning.
Okay, I think we have one question. Is there any cases of both fly strike and new world screwworm at the same animal or simultaneously? Any documentation of that that you guys can?
I think I can answer that. So there is a chance that it might be documented, but again, normal flies strike happens at every farm because we know if we have animal, if they're gonna be there, the fly is gonna move around. And if you have a fly strike and going on New World Screwworm, the fly strike might be the reason why you are getting infested with New World Screwworm, because the fly strike is going to cause a small hole or going to cause a small injury where then New World Screwworm might come, lay their egg, and then the larva is going to bury down. So yeah, I think there might be a lot of cases, but I think it's not something really important to discuss because fly strike is not as concerning or as bad as New World Screwworm. And I think if Dr. Aurora have to add anything on this one, she can add.
I would just repeat what I said earlier. If you use dust on with permethrins, you shouldn't have either. So there's no reason to have both together.
Yes, correct.
And for those of you who have never used the dust on, it's not expensive. Grab a container. It's literally a white dust with insecticide, and you can spray it on the animals. You can spray it in the coop, in the bedding, you name it, wherever it is, and you will see. If you have chickens with mites, they'll disappear in a day or two. They'll be gone. So it's a very, very easy way to help on your day-to-day with, the nasty mites, with the regular flies. I just don't see the reason to have to deal with any type of fly when it's such an easy way to prevent.
Hey, any more questions? Any more comments? Anyone? This is our chance.
Okay, just one more. You mentioned insecticides. If one is trying for organic certification, whether it's USDA or anything else, would the application of these insecticides or these dustings on your farm, even specific to a particular animal, potentially compromise that type of certification?
That depends on your certifier. So you need to consult with your certifier. It's not the same for all of the certifiers. So you need to, I would suggest that you make a list of the products that you would like to use and consult directly with your certifier. I know it's very frustrating, but it depends on the certifier. Organic is not the same in every state. It's not the same in every country. That's very frustrating, but it's the reality.
Yeah, they have different regulations for sure. We got another questions is how high is the risk for regular travelers? Are pets inside a home in Hawaii generally safe, like indoor bunnies? As an example. Anyone would like to take that one?
Yeah, I will take it. Yeah. So I think the very first slide of my presentation was this is not currently present in anywhere in the US territories. So the the pet dogs or cat are not just safe inside house, they are even safe inside the dog parks. Or if somebody is flying their dogs from Oahu to Maui or Big Island and all, and they are following all the like flying protocols and all, they are completely safe. If suppose you are going to any of summer is there, everybody is gonna fly for summer vacation and all, as long as you are flying with your pets and flying anywhere in US, I think you are safe. If you are flying your dogs and cat to Mexico, just make sure they are regularly dewormed. If they have any injury on their body, if suppose they scratch themselves or they just got a small cut somewhere, or they were attacked by another dog, and if they are taken care of, if you are cleaning the wound, if you are making sure the flies are not gonna sit around and all those things, and if they are on those Credelio and those medicines, and I think they are more than safe. You doesn't have to worry about anything. But if suppose you are going for a summer vacation in Mexico and or somewhere in like Central America or South America, and if you're gonna come back, make sure your luggage doesn't have any of those flies. Make sure you have done all the paperwork to bringing your pet back. Yes, and regarding human, I think Dr. Aurora mentioned it's usually if you are on good like conscious and if you are hygiene, yes, you doesn't get this one. Usually if somebody have some mental health issues, if they are not conscious enough to take care of their own self, or if they doesn't have a good hygiene, then only there are chances of having new world screwworm infestation in humans. Yeah, so I hope I answered the question.
I'm gonna add one thing there. If you travel outside of the US, the different countries have different products that are approved for the different diseases, both for prevention and for treatment. Especially in those countries that are currently having any type of issues. We're talking about New World Screwworm, but talk about any other pathogen like malaria or whatever. They will have drugs and products, even insecticides, that are much more powerful than what we have in the US. They are not approved in the US. So if you travel to any of these countries and you think you are at risk, go to a pharmacy over there, if you're worried about your pet, go to a veterinarian over there and have them prescribe or give you the best products they have in that country for that specific problem, because you will be much better protected than taking what we have here where we don't have the diseases and we are not used to treating them.
And also it's worth mentioning, like Aurora mentioned before, of like it's only through any kind of breaks in the skin. So if you have no breaks, like you yourself or your pet or your livestock, there's no breaks in the skin, if there's no injuries or entry points, the fly can't do anything. And so a lot of it is just surveillance and make sure like yourself, like you are, safe and clean and not injured, and whoever you're with is the same. And then kind of like Dr. Aurora mentioned earlier about the environment of like, make sure that we don't have, wire sticking out that's going to poke our animals. Make sure that if we have some new calves hitting the ground or new piglets or what have you hitting the ground, that their umbilical cords are cleaned, that's just management on a normal day management. But just kind of being extra vigilant on those kind of circumstances to not provide the entry point for any kind, really any fly. And Dr. Rajeev mentioned too, we don't have screwworm in the U.S. right now, but blowflies, we can have other types of myiasis, and so this is just kind of like a good practice point of just to be vigilant of like, okay, there's some management points that we need to do anyway. Let's really make sure we harp down on them to make sure that we are extra prepared for a screwworm if it does come.
Right.
Hey, I got a thank you thumbs up. So I guess that was a really good answer for all three of you. So Again, if there is not any more questions, I drop it in the chat, the survey for reporting purposes. I will appreciate you guys filling that up. And I just want to appreciate again Dr. Rajeev Mishra for his presentation and Dr. Aurora Villarroel. It was nice to see something in Spanish too. Prem and Mele Oshiro, both of you, thank you for backing up right here in the logistics parts. I appreciate all of you being present. So just stay tuned for our next webinar. We're gonna prepare a couple guest speakers, and we'll always share the invitation is open for anyone in the public. Thank you for sharing again. And yeah, aloha, mahalo, and good evening. Thank you everyone for attending.